Fellow Mountaineers, old grads, and young lads and lasses, you made it to another edition of the Trust the Beard podcast. Today, we are going to break down the 2025 Backyard Brawl as Pitt invades Morgantown this Saturday at 3:30 p.m. A much anticipated matchup as Rich Rod is playing Pitt for the first time since 2007, December 1st, the 13-9 game. And yes, I'm going to say it. It's time to say it. We got to get over it. We cannot let this linger anymore. But before we jump into all of that, again, I welcome you in. This is September 11th, 2025. A beautiful day in the Mountain State. A somber day in today's in the country today. Obviously, we remember 9/11, right? The tragedy with the Twin Towers and the Pentagon, and then in Shanksburg, Pennsylvania, the victims of that, and also. We look back at the tragedy of Charlie Kirk. So a very sad day. And I'm not going to get too much into it. I'm not going to get political. The only thing I will say on it today is I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. And this is particular for politicians and people who are activists. Do one thing for me today. Find somebody that you think you may not agree with anything on. And just say, hey, how's your day going today? That's all. That's all. Just start small. This nation needs to heal. We're in a lot of trouble right now, and pointing fingers is not the answer. We need to love and uplift each other. That's all I'm going to say. So with that, we will dive right into the Backyard Brawl. I'm going to have my initial thoughts. I got some numbers today. We're going to break down some yards per play, turnover margin, things like that. And we'll see how the teams stack up. I'll give my final thoughts and then a final score prediction. So initially, we'll talk about Ohio a little bit. I'll kind of touch on that. I had a space on this if you didn't catch it earlier this week. And what I did, I went through the tape of the OU game, Ohio University game. And I know a lot of negative energy has been thrown towards the O-line. And I went back and looked at it. They actually didn't play that bad. Many times I counted from the time the ball was snapped, Nico Marchio had about 3 seconds, which, it's not ideal. It's not perfect, but it's enough time to make a play. And I think many times he was just indecisive. I heard it on a podcast earlier. If you listen to Old Grad podcast, you got former Rich Rod players on there. And they kind of said the same thing. They were talking about how Nico kind of ran into trouble, right? And he was a little indecisive. So if that stuff gets cleaned up, I think, we could see some improvement there. And if you listen to the In the Gun podcast, they made a great point too, Jed Drenning did, about with this O-line in this system, you don't have to be dominant. If you could just hold your own, our 5 against their, if they bring 5 or 6, if you could just hold your own for 2 or 3 seconds, enough time to let the play that needs to develop, then we're going to be okay. And so with that said, I think it's in the moment you're kind of down on the team after OU. I certainly was. I kind of did get over it on the way home. But we're going to take our lumps this year. And I told Mountaineer fans that this year you just have to, or at least with the OU game, you just have to take your lumps, right? We're going to get criticized from all points, especially like, Pitt and Marshall and things like that, because OU was a MAC team, although Marshall doesn't have much to say. They lost to, Morgan State or something. But just have to take our lumps on that one, right? We didn't play well, and we got beat by a really good MAC team. And so moving forward with Pitt, obviously this is going to be the most talented team we play up to this point. But if you look at their schedule, Pitt's schedule, theirs is very similar to ours, actually slightly easier, right? They played Duquesne and Central Michigan. And so they haven't quite been tested yet either. And I think that's going to come into play, especially with our defense. And so we'll pause there. And when I come back, I'll bring back some of the numbers. We'll compare the offense, the defense, some X factors, strength of schedule. And then again, like I said, I'll have my final thoughts and my score prediction. Okay, so as you can see here, I have my offensive ratings. I do get these from teamrankings.com, And the one thing about these ratings is they do not include FCS opponents. And so we're basically looking at the rankings of Pitt versus Central Michigan and West Virginia versus Ohio University, right? This does not take into account what both teams did against FCS, which in my opinion, I agree with because they're FCS opponents. You're supposed to dominate. And, so as you can see, I color code these as I did last season. Anything in the red, you're a top tier team in that category. Anything in the orange, you're 26 to 50, right? You're a second tier team. Yellow is third tier. Blue is fourth tier, right? You're second from the bottom. And anything in purple, you are a bottom tier team. You are one of the worst in the country in this category. And as you can see, Pitt is on my left here. WVU is on my right. And their offense is much better than ours. I don't think that is, I'm not saying anything that surprises anybody. If you followed what WVU did against OU, and if you know about Pitt's offense a little bit, they are explosive. They like to throw it around. And you knew that West Virginia struggled against Ohio last week. So if you want to break it down, their average scoring margin for Pitt, they're ranked 16 in the country. They won against Central Michigan by 28. They actually pulled away late. I think through the third quarter, they were only up by a touchdown. So it took some time for them to get into rhythm there. West Virginia, right, we're -7 at 83 because that's, we lost to OU 17 to 10. One of the things I wanted to look at is rush yards per attempt, right? Pitt is 42nd in the country. So it's one of the few things they're not elite at 4.8. I think this could play a factor in if West Virginia wants to win on Saturday, stopping the run, obviously, forcing them to be one-dimensional. And you're really going to need to get a lot of push from your D-line if you're going to do that. Really, there's not a whole lot to say here. They pretty much dominate us in every way. The one thing that's equal is fourth down conversion rate. We haven't converted a fourth down. I don't know how many fourth downs we've gone for, but the same with Pitt. I think that's kind of a minimal stat, right, as far as the impact on the game. But you look at in the black here, it's red zone scoring. And so with that, this doesn't come from the same site. This comes from the NCAA site. This does factor in both games against their G6 and their FCS opponent. It doesn't separate it out. But if you see West Virginia, we're 60% in red zone scoring. Not bad, but we've only reached the red zone 5 times in 2 games. Now you look at Pitt, they're 75%. They're 9 for 12. So obviously they reach the red zone at a higher clip and score at a higher clip than we do. So again, this just kind of bears out offensively. So far, they are much more explosive than we are. And there's not anything in the stats that I can say that if you peer through this or if you squint and look at this number, it's not as bad. They've played well and we've played bad. That's about as simple as it gets. If you look at the bottom, the very bottom number, this is their average ranking through all these categories. And just so you know, we'll run through the categories real quick. It's average scoring margin, yards per play, rush yards per attempt, pass yards per attempt, red zone scoring, the opposing sacks per game. So how many sacks you're giving up in the game. So Pitt has only given up 1. They're ranked 28th. We've given up 4. The opposing sack percentage. So that's how many times you give up a sack or how many times the quarterback drops back. So they're only giving up a sack about a little over 3%. We're giving up a sack about 12%. That's one of the worst in the country. Then, of course, you got third down conversion rate, fourth down conversion rate. And then when we look on the other side of defense, it'll basically just be the opposite of all these categories, right? What are we giving up for our defense? So if you look at the bottom number, Pitt overall, their rank is 32.5, a second tier ranking, and we are 109, right? We are a bottom tier. We just didn't get a lot of offense going. Is that going to be harder to do this Saturday? I don't know. It's hard to say because I don't know that we looked like we should have. Obviously, we didn't, but I don't know if that. I don't think what we showed at OU is a finished product by any means, or even close to what this offense can look like. I think we got ourselves off schedule. We didn't get in a rhythm. I think being on the road, and I think being in an atmosphere like Athens, where you're in this small venue, there's not a lot of fanfare around it, right? It's easy under the bright lights, a big time game like a rival, or your two top 25 teams that are ranked. It's easy to get hyped up for those games. You've seen it before when you go into these smaller stadiums and things like that. Sometimes it can be hard to get hyped up for that game, and obviously they're going to be, because it was a big time Power Four school coming into their stadium. And I don't know if that played a factor, right? I'm not making excuses as to why we lost, but I think just a lot of things compounded on each other, and we just never got in rhythm. The O-line didn't get the push that we needed. We were being too indecisive at quarterback. And so maybe being at home under the bright lights, eventually when it starts to get dark, and being against our arch rival, maybe that adds a little more juice, right? We're a little more focused this week, and hopefully that can play a part in that. And so what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and look at the defensive stats when I come back. Okay, so we're back here, and these are the defensive stats. And I think this is where we can have a little bit more impact on the game. As you can see, Pitt still in the red, have some yellow, but so is West Virginia, right? We're not faring as bad on defense as we did on offense against OU. And I think finally this is going to be a strength of our team this year is defense. We haven't seen that in a long time. Like, 15 seasons or something like that. So, opposing yards per play, right? Pitt only gave up 3.3 to Central Michigan. They only gave up 1.3 rush. They gave up 6.8 passing yards. They got 4 sacks per game. We got 3 sacks. They have a high percentage. Ours is pretty decent at 8.8, right? I think that's supposed to be the orange. I might have got a different shade. But you look at the overall ranking at the bottom, right? They're 30.7, we're 50.5. Not quite the disparity that we had in the offense. The one thing that points out here is you see our one blue number. It's opposing pass yards per attempt. We were giving up 8 against OU. That ranks 91st in the country. That scares me a little bit because I know that Pitt likes to run a high up-tempo passing offense. I think somebody had referenced it similar to what Dana ran, right? That's how it looks similar. But it could be one of those things like our offense where we like to run up-tempo. As you go 3 and out early, you're putting your defense right back on the field. And so it's hard to know how this thing was going to play out. I think some keys to our game, or keys to victory, I think one of them is going to be simply our physicality. And as I said before, this is going to be the hardest game that Pitt has played so far as like talent. I believe we're far more talented than Central Michigan. And obviously Pitt is far more talented than Robert Morris or OU. And so we look at these numbers. I mean, the defense is, again, it's not such the disparity that we had on offense. I think this is going to be a key factor if WVU is going to win on Saturday. And now you look at the opponent red zone scoring, right? We've only allowed 4 trips to the red zone. Pitt has allowed 6 trips, right? Their defense is 1 of 6. So they have allowed fewer scores, touchdowns. And I should clarify that this red zone scoring is just touchdowns, right? It's not field goals, because anybody can make a field goal now. I mean, you see kickers knock it in from 55 beyond with ease in today's game. So this is just touchdowns. And we've both only allowed 1, but the opponents, or at least Central Michigan, got in the red zone 6 times. So that gives us some bit of hope. If we can find some rhythm on offense, maybe we'll at least get in the red zone and get some points on the board, and hopefully our defense can hold like they did against OU. Holstein isn't Navarro. I think overall he's a better quarterback, but I don't think he's as slick or as quick as Navarro is. So I think if we can get him rattled and get him moving, I think hopefully it'll play in our favor. So now what I'm going to give you some X factor stats, and I think this is really going to be a key for West Virginia to win on Saturday. So here we have the overall rankings, but if you look at the third category, it says X factor. Those are both basically turnovers. West Virginia is 8th in the country. It's your turnover margin per game. We're +2 in that category, right? We had 1 turnover, 1 interception by Nico, but we forced 3 turnovers for Parker Navarro. And Pitt is 55. I believe they were at -1 is what their turnover rate is in the one game that's recorded in this. And so I think that's going to be a key. Obviously, turnovers is a key to any game, but I think specifically on this one, if we can generate the same kind of turnovers that we've seen or we saw with Ohio, and at least the same kind of defensive pressure that we saw against Robert Morris, that's going to be the key to us winning the game. Now you look at the column on the left here, you look at the overall rankings, right? Obviously, offense, Pitt trounces us, statistically from what we did on Saturday, what both teams did on Saturday. Defense is a little closer. And then you look at the X factors, we kind of trounce them in that, right? Our turnover margin per game is much higher. And then you have to factor in strength of schedule. And if you look, ours is at ranked 73. Theirs is ranked 113. I think that shows that OU is a much harder team than Central Michigan, right? And this still just factors in G5 opponents, right? It does not factor in the FCS game. And so you average all those out, what our ranking is, and the final number is Pitt has a slight edge of 2.434, right? 60.2 to 57.8. A lot closer than what I thought. And one of the big factors, right, is that X factor, that turnover rate. That big red number 8 that's sitting there in the ranking among the categories, right? That's going to be our key to defense. And I don't think our offense is going to make such an improvement from OU that we're just going to dominate. But I think our defense has shown the capability of being very good this year. Is it top 40, top 30, top 25? Who knows? We'll find out as the season goes on. But from what I've seen, the defense is solid, right? We really haven't had many struggles as far as that goes. We did give up 17 points to OU, but Zach Alley and his team made adjustments, and we shut them out and forced 3 turnovers in the second half. So we did what we were supposed to do, right? Going into OU game, if you said, hey, West Virginia is going to hold them to 17 and turn them over 3 times, you're saying that's a guaranteed victory, right? Fortunately for us, it wasn't, but we did what we were supposed to do defensively. And the same thing against Robert Morris, right? We only allowed them 3 points. We held them to definitely under 200 yards, I think. And so far, the defense has held up their own. And I think they can do that again on Saturday. And again, they will be the key to our success. A lot of things I've seen as well, or actually first, before I go into that, I'll look over here on the right. So this is my beard rating index, BRI, right? It favors Pitt. If you look at the 57.8 to 60, favors Pitt by 2.4. The ESPN FPI right now gives Pitt a 59.4% chance of winning. And of course, the Vegas odds give Pitt a 6.5 spread in winning there. So all signs are pointing to Pitt right now. And, I could easily go with Pitt, right? It would be a sound choice, but as a Mountaineer fan, I refuse to do that. And so what I'm thinking here is our keys to victory. 1, I said, right, the defense, and specifically turnovers. But 2, or at least 3, I really think our physicality is going to play a role here. And I heard this on the Old Grad podcast, and I believe it was Crum that was talking about Pitt's offense is and Reed Williams was talking about it too, is this is not the old school blue collar Pitt that we remember from like 2007, right? This is more of a pass heavy finesse team. And if our physicality can shake them up a little bit, maybe it gets them off schedule, right? And the other thing I've heard, and this is from Pitt's own play-by-play guy, is they're not quite satisfied with Pitt's O-line this year. If there was a unit that was a work in progress or at least needed a boost, it was their O-line. And maybe that plays a factor, right? Maybe Zach Alley can dial up something to create some, blitzes and pressure that they're not ready for. I don't know. The only thing I can hang my hat on is that this is a rivalry. This is the Brawl, and crazy things happen. And I said this before, I tweeted it out, that if the number 2 team in the country can score 60 plus points one week, and then the next week they play at home for a national title on the line against a 3-win team and be held to 9 points, then anything's possible, right? And that's what happened in 2007, right? We came off that huge win against UConn. I believe we beat them like 66-21 or 60-something to 21. I was at that game. And so we were on cloud 9. We felt unstoppable. And coming into the backyard brawl against a 3-win Pitt team, there's no way we were going to lose. Well, we know how that went. They held us to 9 points. Anything can happen in this game. Anything can happen. And so I think with the combination of if our defense can get the right pressures, we can create some turnovers. If our physical play can get them off schedule, I think that's going to make a difference in the game. And I think, honestly, as I sit here today, it is our defense that is going to make the difference, right? I think they're the ones that are going to have to step up, especially after losing Bray and Jaheim White. We don't know what to expect out of the offense. We don't know what we're going to see. We may have to patch something together offensively just to generate some field goals, right? We really don't know what to expect. We didn't know what to expect when we had those stars. And now we're probably really at a loss. And this is when great coaching comes into play, right? This is where Rodriguez and his staff is going to have to put together a game plan to generate some yards. I think we're going to need some more speed on the field. I would not be surprised to see more Henderson or Scotty Fox or Malik Wilkins, right? We need speed. I do think Nico is going to make his third start, right? I think he will be the starter, but I don't think it's going to be a high percentage as it has been the first 2 games. I think you're going to see a lot of mix and matching, something to get their defense a little off balance and try to find some rhythm on offense, right? If that means bringing in Henderson to run a couple draws, I don't know, some options, whatever you have to do, spread them out, run up the middle, whatever you have to do to generate yards. I think that's what we're going to have to do. Not just a running back by committee, but an offense by committee. I think you just got to find different guys who have some speed, can make some open field misses as much as possible, right? You just got to find a way to generate yards and some points. And again, I think defensively, we got to show up. We got to continue that streak of shutting down some run, forcing turnovers, and I think that's going to be our key. But with that said, those were kind of my final thoughts. I think that's what we need to do. Again, get Holstein a little bit rattled. I think that's going to be our best bet. As far as the final score, I think we have to keep it low scoring. I don't think we have the horses right now to go blow for blow. Of course, I've been wrong before. You just never know. Maybe we find a rhythm and we gas their defense. I don't know. And so I think, again, it would be easy to pick Pitt, but as a Mountaineer fan, I'm just not going to do it. I can't force myself to do it. I said it before. If they have a lineup full of NFL All-Stars, Pro Bowlers, and we're patching together some teams from Clay Battelle and Morgantown and University there in Mon County, I would still pick West Virginia because I just can't do it. As a solid, faithful Mountaineer fan, I cannot pick Pitt to win. And so my final score prediction is going to be West Virginia 17, Pitt 14. I hope I'm right. Actually, you know what? I'll redo that. I'm going to do 21-20. West Virginia 21, Pitt 20. That's my final prediction. West Virginia wins the 20-25-yard backyard brawl. We send them home packing, and Rich Rod kind of redeems himself a little bit. We shake off that OU loss. We get a little more momentum in the program, and we start our Big 12 play. We go out to Kansas next week and see what happens. But there you have it from the Trust the Beard podcast. West Virginia 21, Pitt 20. We got to get pressure. We got to find ways to generate some yards and just hang in there, keep fighting, keep slugging, and hopefully the ball bounces our way a few times. So with that, I'm going to close this out. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate all the support. Again, some tragedy strikes the country this week. Remember the fallen from 9/11. Again, if you're on the right side, the left side, the middle of the aisle, wherever you are, go up to somebody on the other side and just ask them how their day is going. That's all you need to do. A small gesture. Let's just get this stuff started. Let's start healing and stop pointing fingers. So with that said, goodbye. God bless. Go Ears.